Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning into our podcast. I have a special guest today. I'm with Dr. Harsh Moole. Dr. Moole is a physician scientist, entrepreneur, a dear friend. Dr. Moole manages and sponsors venture capital deals, real estate syndication projects. He's also the founder of Physician Estate. The Physician Estate platform empowers physicians with high quality entrepreneurial content and real estate investment opportunities. Dr. Moole, great to have you on my podcast. Today, we are going to talk about how physicians can shelter W-2 income with short-term rentals and short-term rental tax loophole. Let's dive right into it. So first off, the average physician salary is about $313,000 in the US. It may sound a lot, but a significant portion of this income goes into taxes. In fact, a physician may end up paying up to 35% of his W-2 income in taxes. However, like some physicians, actually a very low percentage are lowering their tax bills through short-term rental properties. So my first question is, how do they do this, Dr. Moole?
Arda, thank you for having me and the kind introduction. I think if we were to kind of address the core topic, short-term rentals, for folks owning regular real estate, like a long-term rental, you get a duplex or a fourplex and you rent it out. If you generate any losses on it, it is considered passive loss, and you cannot use this passive loss to offset your active ordinary income, which is your W-2 income. What short-term rentals offer is a niche strategy where if you're renting your house as a short-term rental, Airbnb, and I know there is specific rules around what is called a short-term rental. I think throughout the length of the year, if the average stay for every client is less than 7 days or 10 days, that's counted as a short-term rental. As long as you fit into that box and you manage it yourself without like a dedicated property management company, that counts as active involvement. And if you have any depreciation losses in that aspect, it's considered as active loss and not a passive loss. Once it's an active loss, you can use that active loss to offset active income, which is your W-2 income. So you can literally take the losses from your real estate and short-term rental real estate and use that to offset your active income. Now, I think I'll stop there, and there might be a multiple set of follow-up questions on like, what do you mean by loss? Do I lose money? But we'll get there when we get there.
Yeah, no, that's it. Like actually, really, like you are simplifying for our, like an audience. But you're absolutely right. According to the tax code, short-term rental properties can be excluded from definition of rental activity, and therefore classified as passive if certain conditions are met. And just like you said, the average stay of customer use for the property is 7 days or less, or the average period of customer use for the property is 30 days or less, and a significant personal services such as cleaning or meals are provided by or on behalf of the property owner. Once one of these conditions is met, your rental property is no longer passive by default. So I guess my follow-up question, Dr. Moole, in order to shelter, like your W-2 income, I believe you have to materially participate in that rental. So what is material participation? If you could, kind of clarify that for us.
Absolutely. Material participation is where the IRS wants you to be in charge of managing your active rental. That's a simple way of putting it. There are some definitions around it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Arda. From what I can remember, let's say I own a short-term rental. There has to be at least like 100 hours per year where I go put that listing or edit that listing or manage the customers that live in the short-term rental, as in talk to them or hand them over the food arrangement or whatever you want to call it, as long as all those things add up to 100 when you log it, and that should be good enough to qualify as active participation. Now, a good point to note here is there is something else called real estate professional status, which is completely different to what we're talking with the short-term rental. Real estate professional status is not what this is about. That is a different set of criteria. You have to qualify for 750 hours. People typically use real estate professional status when they're trying to convert their like rental income from regular rental, long-term rentals to offset their W-2 income. That's when rep status comes into play. But qualifying as rep is way, way, way more challenging or trickier than able to offset like short-term rental sort of depreciation. So I think for short-term rental, material participation means simple, like direct management of the property by spending at least 100 hours over the year, and that should, in my opinion, do it. Again, I'm not a tax advisor, not an attorney. Please consult with your own folks, but that is my understanding, and it's just my personal experience.
No. This is an excellent actually explanation, and I believe the goal here is to use your short-term rental for non-passive losses. This is what you want because non-passive losses can offset non-passive income, including W-2 or active business income. And if you can meet the criteria, your short-term rental will save you money on taxes. And that's actually the first key component of short-term rental tax strategy. And I believe the second is depreciation. So my, next question to you, how do you leverage non-passive losses and depreciation for your short-term rental tax strategy?
Right. I think this is a really good question. This is where most people get hung up or confused in this area. The typical question that I get when I talk about, oh, we're going to write off your W-2 income, they're like, we're writing off from losses, so you're actually losing money in the other business, so you can write off. How is that even beneficial? And then you would typically kind of take a couple steps back and say that, no, these are not real losses. These are not losses because you don't have tenants. These are not losses because you have to put in a new roof. This is losses, paper losses, phantom losses, we call them, from depreciation. So the IRS tax code allows for every property to be depreciated completely in like 28 to 38 years or something, depending upon the nature of the property. What that means is IRS says that, okay, once you have a property, there's going to be wear and tear over a span of like 30 to 40 years. This property is going to be worthless, is what the IRS says. So, and what they do is, every year, they break down the whole value of the property into 30 different parts. Let's say a property is $600,000, and you divide that into 30 years. So every year you can take out $20,000 as a loss because the property is going through wear and tear. That's what IRS allows you to do. So every year you get 20,000 loss for that. You can write that off as if it's a regular rental as a passive loss, if it's a short-term rental as an active loss. So you can literally take that 20,000 and first use to offset the rental income that the short-term rental is generating. Let's say short-term rental is generating only 10,000 and you have depreciation of 20,000 loss for that year. You have extra 10,000 loss left over, right? So you can actually, that's an active loss because it's a short-term rental. You can take that onto your W-2 and use that to offset 10,000 of the W-2 income. So you don't have to pay taxes on $10,000 of your W-2. That's only a very small part of it, but where the real difference maker comes in is something called cost segregation study. What a cost segregation study does is, and I believe the cost segregation study rules are going to change starting 2025. There is not much room left because during the Trump era, they had extended it, and we are still waiting to hear from Biden's administration on if they're going to extend the cost benefits or if they're going to cap it out. What cost segregation does is it's an engineering study that is done by tax experts or specialist companies. They come to your property and look at your property and say, hey, over the 30 years, they divide it into, out of the 30 years, how much of your property has stuff that can be worthless in 5 years, be worthless in 15 years, be worthless in 30 years. And the stuff that is worthless in year 1, 5, and 15, they all can be pulled together, and then all that depreciation can be taken on year 1. So typically for rental properties, apartment buildings, this can be anywhere from like 35 to 60% cost depreciation. So in the previous example that I said, if the property is worth $600,000, you can depreciate close to 300,000 in as a paper loss on year one. Now, let's say as a doctor, you're making 300,000, which is active income. On the paper loss, you have negative $300,000 coming in from accelerated depreciation from the cost seg study from the short-term rental. It completely wipes out your W-2 income. You have to pay $0 tax. You don't owe anything to anyone. So that is a more, I guess, significant version of the depreciation that many people are using it now, but we don't know how long it's going to be available.
Great insights. Yeah, I think you hit the nail like in the head. So basically, one thing I would like to point out, in order to like shelter your W-2 like on a high income, we can simply kind of break it down to four like easy steps. The first step is to buy a short-term rental. The second step is materially participating in that rental. The third is to generate losses. These are paper losses, as you indicated. And the fourth is to find a savvy real estate tax accountant who understands how to use like these losses to shelter W-2 or 1099 income, right? So my last question is, Dr. Moole, what's changing about bonus depreciation for short-term rentals, and why do you think it's time to act now?
As I kind of briefly covered in the last answer, and again, I'm not 100% updated on the recent developments in the news, but at least based on the last couple of cost seg studies that we've done, we were notified that this rule is probably going to expire in 2025 or phase out, so to speak. I don't know the specifics of how they're going to phase it out, but we are still waiting to hear from Biden's administration on if they were going to extend it, but we just don't know. So that's why most of the assets that we have, we did a cost seg study in the last couple of years just to not take any chances, because we do think that this is an amazing strategy for high net worth folks to shield their W-2. There's very few areas or ideas on how W-2 income can be shielded. And this is one of the, if done correctly, this is one of the straightforward ones where you can still have the potential to make a profit by owning that rental. There is multiple other things like land conservation, investing in oil and gas companies, or yada yada, but those are extremely high risk. Some are litigious. Nobody has a clear pathway in those fields, but short-term rentals is one of the proven straightforward things if done correctly. And also, like I said, if bought correctly, there is a potential to generate positive cash flow.
Yep. No. Again, great insights and great conversation, Dr. Moole. And thanks again for joining me today.
Thanks, Arda.